Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Arnab Goswami on the debate at 10. Presented by Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 5G. Powered by Reva University, Vedanta, B1 and Greenland.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The Taliban horrors are a global reality tonight. America has failed at avenging 9/11, failed at taking on the Al-Qaeda, failed at eliminating the ISIS-K. And tonight, on My Debate, Americans must own up. Let's debate.
Taliban and its terror backers conducting a mock funeral. Watch this video of how coffins are draped in US, UK, France and NATO flags. This video was reported from Khost in Afghanistan. The Taliban is sending a loud message to America when Anas Haqqani of the Haqqani group, seen in this video, returning to the Bagram jail that housed him and, like him, 5,000 of the most dreaded global terrorists. He's now a free man. Or this video that shows them storming into Panjshir to ensure bloodshed and kill the patriots in Afghanistan who stood by America. Republic is reporting live from the ground on the reality of Taliban. We are live from Panjshir.
From Afghanistan near Panjshir Valley, as you know that Taliban has taken control over whole country, Afghanistan, without Panjshir. But there was negotiation 2 days ago, a few days ago, and it was probably saying that they might have to reach for an agreement.
In Nangarhar, there are targeted killings, not being reported by any media house globally except Republic, on the ground.
The main problem that target killing are still continuing in Taliban have done nothing for this. In Taliban is searching house by house.
Or this report of how Afghans have been left in the lurch across the country. They're struggling to survive. Here's a report filed by Republic from Kabul.
जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं कि आज का दुनिया एक डिजिटल दुनिया है और सारे काम अब डिजिटल है हो गई है। तकरीबन 3 हफ्ता के अफगानिस्तान में सारी बैंक्स बंद है और लोग पैसे बैंक से नहीं निकाल सकते अफगानिस्तान में।
Cut off from the reality, the American president continues to pour faith in the same Taliban.
It's time to end the war in Afghanistan. As we close 20 years of war and strife and pain and sacrifice, it's time to look to the future, not the past, to a future that's safer, to a future that's more secure, to a future that honors those who served and all those who gave what President Lincoln called their last full measure of devotion.
Massacre. Hangings. Targeted killings. The rule of Taliban terror has begun, and the horrors are a global reality tonight. Let's debate.
James Russell is an associate professor at the Department of National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School. He's joining us live from California. Chairman of the Foreign Policy Institute of Turkey, Professor Hussein Bakay. Dr. Hussein, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael O'Hanlon is Senior Fellow and Director of Research of Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution in Washington. Nargis Nihan is former Acting Minister of Mines, Petroleum and Industries in the Afghanistan government. Tonight she joins me from Norway. Smita Prakash is Editor of Asian News International. Sushant Sareen is Senior Fellow at the ORF and very well-known strategic expert. May I start with you, Mr. O'Hanlon? I don't know what your view is, but we heard Joe Biden say it is time not to look back. He says we must look to the future. We must look to a safer future, but we would want to look back. And not look back too far, but look back to the 23rd of July, as reported in Reuters, a phone conversation between Ashraf Ghani and Joe Biden, in which Ashraf Ghani says to Joe Biden that Mr. Biden, at least 15,000 international terrorists, most of them Pakistanis, are thrown into this. It's on record. What Biden is saying is something completely different. That's perjury. It's perjury to the American people and perjury to the world. It proves that knowingly America gave the Taliban a prepared and rehearsed walkover. What we've been saying all along, it was not a mess. It was not a mess, it was planned. It was not chaotic, it was rehearsed. Ashraf Ghani says we are facing a full-scale invasion. He says, and the exact words are, Mr. O'Hanlon, there is full Pakistani planning and Pakistani logistical support. 15,000 international terrorists, predominantly Pakistanis, are coming in. Has there been a single acknowledgement of this conversation by the American government? If not, why not?
Well, you and I both live in democracies. I don't speak for the government, and I don't think you speak for yours. I was strongly opposed to what Joe Biden decided in April. I've been very deeply saddened and worried by the Taliban takeover, but I also do not believe what you just said about the idea that somehow this was a planned walkover, that the United States was in cahoots with the Taliban to orchestrate. A very bad policy made it possible for that to happen, and it was foreseeable that this was a distinct scenario that could emerge. And that's why I was consistent and vocal and very public in disagreeing with the American president and advising him before his April decision not to pull forces out. But I still do not agree with your allegations that this was somehow pre-rehearsed between the United States and the Taliban. I think that's an unnecessary leap. One can be sufficiently concerned and sufficiently critical of the situation without going to that kind of a fantasy. But I agree that the United States has handled this very badly.
Mr. O'Hanlon, you use very ornamental language like leap and fantasy. I am not an Olympian, nor am I fantasizing anything. I hope that you, on the contrary, have had the opportunity to see the full Ashraf Ghani Biden tapes. Biden refused air support. And then, after refusing air support, Sushant went on to blame the Afghan forces. I'm not fantasizing anything.
So you're right about that.
One second. I repeat, you know what Ghani said. I'm not making this up. He said, I need close air support. And he went on to say, could I make a request? Please, our front air force should be front-loaded. Biden said no. He said no. Why? Sushant.
So Arnab, so here is the thing. I think one of the fundamental problems of how the Americans have handled this war over the last 20 years is that they have virtually ignored the role of Pakistan, or at least turned a blind eye to it, and not pushed enough when they should have. There were some reasons for it, but most of the reasons were not good enough for not pushing hard enough. And apart from this constant exhortation to do more, they always dealt with the Pakistanis with kid gloves. So I wouldn't say that the Americans orchestrated bringing the Taliban in, but the monumental mistakes which the Americans have made over the last 20 years, I think they're just too many to be counted. But the important thing is that at the point when the Pakistanis were making the final push into Afghanistan and into capturing power out there, I think the Americans were in the withdrawal mode. And at that point of time, they'd virtually given up, and they said, look, since we are pulling out all sorts of air support, everything, we are not going to get back into it first through air and then through maybe, put boots on the ground and what have you. So I think that was what, at least in my view, that is what the dynamic was. But the fact that the Americans have consistently ignored the backstabbing, the treachery of the Pakistanis, I think has been one of the fundamental reasons why this war has gone the way it has gone.
No, but Sushant, I look at it differently. If you are fighting terrorism or you are fighting the enemy, you are either fighting the enemy or you're not. You can't say we need to project to the world that we are fighting. You can't say, Professor Russell, that we need to give a perception to the world that we are fighting. We need to project something even though it may not be the reality. And Professor Russell, if you see, and I go back to the Ghani-Biden tapes, I can't believe it. Biden was saying exactly that. He says there is a need, and he goes on to say whether it is true or not, there is a need to project a different picture. And he goes on to say the perception is that things are not going well in terms of the fight against the Taliban. He goes on to say, even if that is true, I need to tell the world that it is. And you need to join hands with me in projecting a different picture, which means you need to join hands with me in lying to the people of America and lying to the world. It's as clear as daylight. I don't know whether this fact that an American president is telling the president of another country to lie to the world and lie to the people of America, and that's on record, is not a raging debate in America tonight.
You want me to react to this? I don't know.
You have a problem reacting to it, Professor Russell? It was a very pointed question. You want me to be obtuse about my question?
I haven't seen the transcripts of the Biden-Ghani call. I actually don't regard Biden as being in a situation of lying through his teeth about the decisions that he's made going forward in Afghanistan. I agree with Mike that perhaps those decisions could have been made in a better, more orderly fashion. But one of the things that this whole situation highlights is the degree to which we in America, and I would sort of tip my cap to the previous caller, being that thinking that we were somehow in control of events there. And the fact is we weren't. And we in the United States have been kind of in error. We've been telling ourselves that we were somehow in control of events. Events then tumble out of control, and then we're quote unquote surprised. I think that's the only criticism that you can level at Biden about this. But I essentially would point you back to the speech he made the other day about his explanations about why he did what he did and the decision-making process that produced the decision to leave. I don't fundamentally disagree with his decision to get out of Afghanistan. I think it was the right thing to do. I wish it had happened better. I wish it had happened in a more orderly way, but it hasn't. And I think he's made the right move to get us out and also to get as many people out as he could. And I think the airlift has succeeded in that.
Okay. Professor Russell, you use certain words. I find it fascinating. You use words such as things tumbled out of control, almost suggesting that there was a lack of predictability about the way things would go. However, what I have just quoted here is direct quotes of the American president telling Ashraf Ghani that even if things are going to tumble out of control, we need to lie about it. We need, in his words, to project a different picture, whether or not the picture we are projecting is true or not. We have not made this up. What horrifies me today is that the American media is not even considering the import of this conversation. But this is a global conversation. Things were created. Therefore, my only point to you is, Biden created a situation, Biden, that is the American government, created a situation which would induce complacency by telling the world things are okay, when he knew a couple of months back that things were not, and Ashraf Ghani was telling him things are not. He said we need to keep saying things are okay. Why? If he had shared the reality, maybe the world would have reacted differently.
I'm not sure how you want me to react to this, except to say that I would point more directly, actually, to the what I view as the rather than focusing on a single meeting or discussion between Biden and Ghani, the sort of years, it goes back years in the war, of senior military and political leaders in the United States getting on public podiums and declaring that things were really going well. And in my particular case, I went there 3 or 4 times, and it was pretty obvious that things really weren't. So just as a taxpayer and as an interested person, I would have appreciated a more honest conversation about what was actually really happening on the ground from our senior military and political leaders going back a decade. So I actually,
Professor Russell, to that again, I bring in Smita.
I'm actually focused upon.
I'll bring in Smita, and you mentioned about
over the last decade between senior civil military leaders that weren't accurate, right?
I would counter that too, and with a very specific point. You mentioned military commanders. Let me bring in Smita, and I'll add one point to it. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, he told Ghani, and I quote, "The perception in the United States, the perception in the media sort of thing, is a narrative of Taliban momentum, a narrative of Taliban victory. We need to collectively demonstrate against that perception to turn that perception and turn that narrative around." Now, what does this mean? It means, Professor Russell, the shocking reality that the military commanders of America were acting like PR agents. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the US was telling the Afghanistan president, we may know the Taliban has the momentum, but let's change the narrative, not change the situation on the ground. Now that is what is really revealing, Smita.
Arnab, I haven't heard the tapes, I haven't seen the transcript, so I really don't know the exact quotes. But what I do know is that when wars are fought, narratives are written. They may be divergent from what is happening on the ground. I mean, you remember after the second Gulf War, after the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein was also celebrating victory. So was Colin Powell. So anybody can say that they won, but here it's quite clear that America's goals changed. There was a frustration. There was this feeling of this never-ending war. He's the third president who's promised to bring the troops back, and I think they willy-nilly bought the Taliban argument that Taliban is a new being. It's going to be an inclusive government. It was a fig leaf, and they wanted to believe it because they wanted to get out. It was a clumsy withdrawal. Everybody has seen what happened. The fact is that what has now taken place is that because they believed the Taliban and because they sort of gave a legitimacy, it's a loose word, I agree, but when you say that we are handing over charge, in effect they gave legitimacy to a terror group and handed over a nation to a terror group which supplied Kool-Aid to the media in America and to the strategic community and probably the intelligence organizations too who believed it. Now, what is India supposed to do? Since you have enough Americans on the panel, what is India supposed to do? Because here too, our politicians are wondering now, especially the opposition, holding our rulers, our ruling party, their feet to fire to say that do not give recognition to the Taliban, do not talk to them, because by doing that, you are giving legitimacy. But then can we keep away from it? Because if we talk only to nations which have the same worldview as us, it's a kind of a utopian reality. That's not how international relations functions, unfortunately.
I don't know.
We have this uncomfortable yet unavoidable reality to deal with, that the Taliban is there.
No, Smita, I'm surprised. I don't know which terrorist regime in the past India has endorsed that you would expect us to do so now.
But which?
There are no ifs and buts on that.
Why should we endorse or not endorse?
No,
the Taliban doesn't operate in India.
No. One second. There's no argument there. The ISIS can also claim that once upon a time it didn't operate in India. That's no argument. I want to go back to the larger point here. And I know Professor Russell and Michael O'Hanlon, I know that perhaps the perspective that I'm providing tonight is a different perspective. It's an uncomfortable perspective. But I would like to tell you, Michael, that this is the perspective that is emerging in large parts of the world. America does not think that the rest of the world is the rest of the world's problem. America thinks that the rest of the world, when it suits America, is America's problem. And the rest of the world, when it doesn't suit America, is the rest of the world's problem. Today, there has been a rebalancing. And both in terms of power equations and media. American media may not ask these questions, but this is the question. Now, I'll give you a very specific point, Professor Dr. Hussain. Biden says, I don't want to look back at the past. But he said to Ashraf Ghani on 23rd of July that I will continue to provide you air support. And all the way I will provide you air support against the Taliban till the end of August. And who knows what after that, which means he said that till the 31st of August, he will be providing air support against the Taliban. Reality, Dr. Hussain, leave alone air support. There was no air support, and then he called the Afghan forces cowards. It's about what you said to someone else and what you did. So I'm only proving the angle of complicity here, Dr. Hussain.
Thank you very much. First of all, the American withdrawal from Afghanistan is considered as one of the military fiasco after Vietnam. But at the same time, the Americans realized first time in the history that more than 120,000 people have been taken out from the country. This operation is unique in itself. So that Americans were not providing air force to Afghan army, and Mr. Ashraf Ghani was forced to leave the country. He said, I'm leaving because I don't want to get a civil war. Just 1 month ago in Tashkent, I was at the conference where Ashraf Ghani and Imran Khan have debated, a very harsh debate, because Ashraf Ghani accused Pakistan to support Taliban. And then Imran Khan came to the speak, and he rejected this. But everyone there, including the Uzbekistan State President Joseph Borrell from the European Union, Lavrov from America, from Russia, and all these people from the region have been there, debating there. Salman Khalilzad was also there. We have been together in the same panel with Salman Khalilzad. Nobody on the 16th of July have expected that the Americans would withdraw in such a speed that the Afghan army collapses. 300,000 people of the Afghan army, which was educated not only by the Americans but also by the Turkish military experts, they didn't fight. This is unique. I mean, it is very difficult to understand from the military point of view how such a highly developed, weaponized army does not show any reaction. It is not logical. There must have been something else. I don't know what the Americans have been negotiating with Taliban in Doha. What they promised and what have taken as promises, I don't know. But the fact is, Joe Biden's continuation of the Donald Trump policies, of course, created a loss of reputation for the United States of America. And at least from Turkish point of view, the Americans' failure in Afghanistan is considered like this. Now, I'm very careful to formulate. The Americans put billions of dollars there, but not for infrastructure. They put military forces there, but not hospitals, not schools. Is not enough. They didn't go to the needs of the society. With this money, you can create 10 times Afghanistan in a modern sense. As Jeffrey Sachs used to say recently, said, Americans considered themselves as hammer and the others as nail. So it was maybe one of the biggest military mistakes of the American military establishment. But the question is here, are the Americans left forever, or how they will react later on to the developments in Afghanistan? Because Taliban is also forced to make political compromises. You know, it is not anymore.
But Dr. Hussain, it is clear to us, and we've been looking at different points of evidence which come to us. It is clear to us it was not a mistake. It was not a miscalculation. It was not sudden chaos. It was authored and executed by the Americans. There's no doubt about that. I just wonder how Nargis looks at it. Nargis Nihan, you've been a minister in Afghanistan. How do you look at it?
Well, the way that we look at it, first of all, like everybody else, none of us were in Afghanistan were expecting that so suddenly the whole country will fall, and especially our national security forces would fall. To be honest to you, as ex-minister and cabinet member serving in former President Ghani's administration, I was foreseeing the situation that we are going to face collapse of the state, but I never thought that it's going to be that soon. I thought at least we have 2021. The reason that I was foreseeing the collapse of state was because of first of all, the domestic issues that we had in the country, including lack of good governance, corruption, impunity, racism that we saw in the government. But then on top of that, we also saw the peace process, which was totally mismanaged in a very irresponsible manner by the United States and the leadership of Ambassador Khalilzad. Fine, Joe Biden is someone that he does not understand culturally and socially Afghanistan. He does not understand how we operate as a society, what are our weaknesses, what are our strengths. But Khalilzad is someone who is originally an Afghan. He understands very well how Afghanistan operates and what are our sensitivities. But unfortunately, he made this whole peace process more a career process for himself and making sure that at any cost it should be successful, so that he can report that in his own CV without thinking what is happening inside Afghanistan. This is absolutely true that our forces did not fight the Taliban, but that's because of lack of moral. On one hand, they thought that there's no leadership in the government motivating them for fighting, and then on top of that, they also thought that they don't have support of the United States anymore, which is very true. There are several sounds and voices that we have that they were being distributed in different groups, especially in WhatsApp, that our commanders and our forces are talking and they're complaining that we're not getting the support they require in order to be able to fight the Taliban. So imagine those foot soldiers situation, that they are somewhere in the middle of a province, they're fighting the Taliban, who are being supported by outsiders, and they are coming quite aggressively for attacking and trying to take the whole country. But then on the other hand, on one hand, they don't have any support from the US side, and they also don't have any kind of moral support from the government. And the other thing, because of the lack of popularity of the administration, especially in the second term under leadership of former President Ghani, the whole media, civil society, and all people, social media, somehow unknowingly, everybody began to talk more about Taliban victory and loss of the government without thinking that actually they are somehow indirectly supporting the position of Taliban. So people are reporting about fall of province after one province. People were talking about some sort of political settlement that was going on between the Taliban and different provincial council members, governors, and others. And this actually itself in the media, the way that it was being reflected, and the rapid way that it was happening, basically actually many of the provinces concluded that the whole country is going to fall anyways. So what is the point of fighting?
Agreed. Agreed. But all of this was visible, and all of this was known, and
Yes.
all of this could have been predicted. I'm just trying to understand here, where's the unpredictability of the situation? It's all visible and known.
Yes, it was all visible. I think the only thing that none of us predicted was that it is all going to come so soon. The time that that it happened, none of us predicted.
No, the Americans knew. The Americans knew because the American president was making a false promise of providing air support, which he reneged on. He went back on. So obviously, if the Americans are promising air support and pulling back on that promise, they know the implications of that.
So as I said, our forces, when they saw that they don't have support of the US, they don't have support and leadership in the government, and then on top of that,
but let me look forward.
None of us also predicted that Dr. Ghani would basically leave everything and abandon Afghanistan.
I mean, everybody who knows Ashraf Ghani's background knew he's not a popular leader. First time he fought elections, got 3% of the vote. He's basically, like many other functionaries there, an American puppet who was betrayed by his own master towards the end. My question to Michael O'Hanlon is, if it's clear to us as daylight that in the coming days, Afghanistan and large parts of Pakistan, together with Afghanistan, will become a global epicenter of terrorism. The Taliban and its leaders have directly or indirectly taken control of large parts, along with the Al-Qaeda of Afghanistan. The Al-Qaeda is operating freely. Its members have been brought into the government. Mr. O'Hanlon, America says that what is happening in Afghanistan is not their problem anymore. In your view, the Al-Qaeda partnership, open partnership with the Taliban in the events of the last 24 hours, is that something for America to consider its problem? Or is the Al-Qaeda no longer, or the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban alliance, which has become, and the Haqqani alliance, which has become evident in the last 24 hours, also not America's problem in your view?
Still our problem. And we still owe it to our friends like India to make it our problem and work with you collaboratively, because India, I think, played a very good role in this last 20 years. And even though you've heard me disagree with some of your interpretations today, I want to salute Indian friends. You've tried very constructively to help with development in Afghanistan, and you also didn't do more than perhaps would have been prudent, given the difficult relationship with Pakistan and Pakistan's inclination to see any Indian hand as somehow malevolent or threatening. So I think we owe it to you, we owe it to other friends, and we owe it to the Afghan people to stay engaged. And that's part of why I was so critical of President Biden's decision, because this kind of outcome was possible. In fact, something like this was likely, even though I do not agree with you that we orchestrated it. We should have known better. And now we do still owe ourselves, as well as our partners and friends, concern about the ongoing threat of terrorism and the ongoing threat to human rights.
Well, I thank you for saying that, though I continue to disagree with you on your assessment that I am in some way fantasizing in saying that America rehearsed this. Let's continue to disagree on that. Let's look at the future. Looking at the future, Professor Russell, the future will engulf and involve us all. And the problem is Pakistan. Is there anyone today who doesn't realize the problem is even greater in Pakistan today than in Afghanistan? The problem is, are we going to tackle Pakistan together, or are we going to let go there as well? What do you think?
I think one of the outcomes of the Afghan war is that Pakistan is going to continue its drift away from the West. The United States was engaged in a close partnership with Pakistan during the post 9/11 era. And as you have also commented, we were on opposite sides of the fence in Afghanistan. Pakistan and the United States were not aligned in our objectives in Afghanistan. And I would think that one of the aftermaths of America's withdrawal from Afghanistan is that the American-Pakistani relationship is going to deteriorate, and you're going to see Pakistan become closer to China, for example. And I think this is going to be one of the strategic outcomes of the American withdrawal. And,
well, the last time, however, Professor Russell, Sushant, the last time the Taliban gave succor to the Al-Qaeda, it led to 9/11. This time it's not just the Al-Qaeda, Sushant. It is Al-Qaeda, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Islamic State of the Khorasan province, Islamic State, Taliban all together. So it's even more dangerous. Sushant.
Of course, it's far more dangerous today because most of these groups have become far more capable in terms of carrying out terrorist attacks. They've got far more resources today than what they had at the time of 9/11. So yes, it's a much worse situation which is being left behind. And the problem is going to be compounded by the fact that the Americans have no intention of doing anything to what I call the mother organization of terrorism in the AFPAC region, which is the ISI and its shenanigans, which has given rise to many of these groups. So one is that. The other is, the Americans have been telling everybody the Al-Qaeda has been decimated. That was the word which the American president used. When clearly that's a falsehood. It hasn't been decimated. It is in fact very much alive and kicking. These are guys, the Al-Qaeda guys have been fighting Precisely. On the side of the Taliban for the last 20 years. And for the American president to turn around and say that Al-Qaeda has been decimated, I don't know where that was coming from. And then, if that was not all, you have all these other groups now getting a safe haven of the sorts they've never had in the past. And then I hear something very ridiculous that the Taliban are suddenly the good guys. There are good Taliban. Now the Americans subscribe to the good Taliban theory, and the bad guys are the ISKP. Now, what is so bad about the ISKP? What does the ISKP do which the Taliban have not done over the last 20 years? What does the ISKP, what are the capabilities? I've seen so much write-up on the ISKP as though it is the new Islamic State. But tell me something, what is the capability of the ISKP?
I'd like any of our panelists, James or Michael or Professor Dr. Hussain, to take that very pointed question coming in. Professor Dr. Hussain, you heard Sushant say that that's what enrages people in India. The ISKP is different from the Taliban. It is not, is it?
I'll add one point, which is I agree with your concern about overlapping membership.
It is a different one. Taliban tries now to control all the other groups, and as every revolution has the principle, the revolution eats its own children. We will have a big problem within the Taliban-controlled radical groups, and Taliban is at the moment trying to get international recognition and prove to the world that Taliban is not providing a state of terror, neither to Afghans themselves nor to the world. Probably it is part of the deal with the Americans in Doha. The question is here how Taliban will run the country economically, politically, public administration. The Taliban has a big problem now. They don't know how to run the country. And if they do put the country economically into order, of course, there will be much more reactions to Taliban.
But Dr. Hussain, America has been the first to push for sanctions against governments, even at a time in the past when humanitarian concerns were cast aside, saying the dangers of not having sanctions are greater. Michael, wouldn't that apply now vis-a-vis the Taliban as well? Shouldn't that apply now?
We have to be careful here, I agree, because any kind of concessions that are made to the Taliban need to be done after it's proven a certain form of moderation and with the possibility of observing and monitoring going forward and the possibility of revoking any kind of recognition or aid or access to financial bank accounts abroad that we temporarily granted. The more we can act as an international community together on that, the better. I agree with your central point.
Yeah, absolutely, but you know, the problem is the longer rope we give, Smita, the stronger the Taliban becomes. The longer we wait.
I get that. Look, I think maybe we've been a bit too harsh, while judging America. They have spent billions of dollars. We have spent millions of dollars in constructing Afghanistan. And that has not paid off well, I think, for the Americans. But as far as India is concerned, we have made tremendous gains in the past 20 years regarding to bring about peace in Afghanistan. We cannot shut the door and scoot like the Americans have done. We have shut the embassy, we've shut the consulates yet, but we live in this region. We cannot get out. So, while we can be judgmental about Americans and about the way, the positioning that they have taken, we can't afford to do that. We have to be realistic. We have to be part of the discussions there. Whether it is even with a terror group like Taliban out there, we have to be, because like there's a saying which is used pretty often, that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, which means that if you want to influence decisions, decisions, then you have to be there. Otherwise, you'll be eaten up, metaphorically.
No, Smita.
So I'm afraid we can draw red lines, yes, when it comes to our strategic interests. But we have to convey to the Taliban that we are part of the discussions.
We don't have to convince the Taliban of anything. Smita, I think Sushant completely disagrees with you. We live in a world where America is beating their chest, claiming a victory over ending the war. We have a gigantic opportunity to take a position that is ethically, morally, and diplomatically puts us in a stronger position. We must never talk to a terror conglomerate. If we start engaging officially with the Taliban now, remember, we are unofficially engaging with the Al-Qaeda and the Hizbul Mujahideen and the Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Just need to bring in a bit of nuance in this. My point is that it is one thing to open up certain lines of communication. For example, you need to get your people out. You need to get your Afghan friends out. You need to get certain minority groups out, right? So if you open a line of communication and it's a kind of a tactical thing, there's nothing wrong in it. After all, we were talking to the damn Hurriyat, right? We've been talking to many of such despicable characters. So if you're talking to the Taliban, heavens are not going to fall. We are not according them recognition. We are not according them legitimacy. We are not endorsing any of their actions. Point number one. Point number two, I think the government of India will be in a wait and watch mode. Let us see. Look, the kind of a blanket thing which Smita is talking about, I disagree. If the Taliban, for example, were to crack down on all sorts of terrorist organizations like the Al-Qaeda and all that entire menagerie of terrorist groups which exists in Afghanistan, that is one point. That's probably a necessary condition. But in my book, a sufficient condition would also be how the Taliban treat people inside Afghanistan. if they continue to carry out the kind of atrocities they did from 96 to 2001, I don't see how with any degree of morality you can engage with the Taliban, you can have diplomatic relations or accord any kind of recognition to the Taliban.
Well,
you
I mean, I don't know.
And you should not do it.
No,
May I come in? If they turn out to be an ultra-conservative kind of a thing, but, you know, people get rights, people get... it's not the horror show it was of the 90s.
Who
yes,
says
you can
it's
then
not?
Consider it.
Now, I find myself in a unique position where I disagree with almost my entire panel, but that's all right. You know, you say horror situation. I'd say New York Times says Biden is playing the long game. You say, how will Taliban treat people? On the 9th of August, a woman was shot dead in the village of Samarkand because the Taliban person said the clothes that you're wearing are too tight. Shot dead. And the last thing they said to her is, where's the male account? Where is a man? Why is a man not accompanying you? Shot dead. We can't give them a long rope. I thank you so much. This has been a very, very interesting discussion.